Hey everyone, welcome back to another video by Camroom 5. From now on, we are starting biology also. So this is the first video about cells and tissues. So when we talk about cells, let's first talk about their basics. They are the basic structural and functional unit of all living organisms. So they're the structural and functional unit of living organisms. It means they determine the structure and the functions the organism would be able to perform. They divide to form new cells. So there's a concept of cell division, or you can say binary fission. So they divide to form new cells, and this phenomena is known as biogenesis, which means one cell makes another. When we talk about tissues, tissues are made by a group of cells. You should know that they could be similar, they could be slightly different, but they're a group of cells that have a similar function at the end of the day. So they have a similar function, functional purpose, they perform a same kind of task in the body. There can be intercellular fluid. A lot of students miss this part of the definition. You should know that there can be intercellular fluid, which means there's a fluid between these cells. It helps in the exchange of chemicals. For example, chemicals from one cell goes to the other cell through the fluid. Imagine red blood cells, white blood cells, and plasma. On the left, you can see these biconcave shaped red blood cells. In the middle, you can see these white blood cells which have a very prominent nucleus. And on the right, you can see plasma, which has liquid part and platelets. Blood is actually a tissue. When you see a blood vessel carrying the entire blood, it has plasma in it, which is the intercellular fluid. It has a lot of red blood cells in it. It has those yellow looking white blood cells in it, and as a result, this combined entity is a tissue. And you know, tissues have a proper function, so here we have a proper function also. Let's also talk about some specialized cells within the body. So when we talk about specialized cells, let's begin with a plant example, root hair cell. Imagine a plant with its roots embedded within the soil. When you magnify the roots, you can see that there are hair-like structures coming out of the root. These structures are known as root hair. You can imagine a carrot, for example, it has a lot of root hair on it. When you magnify, you see a root hair cell which is on the surface. It has a tail-like extension within the shape. Why do we have it? Because that's going to provide higher surface area to volume ratio, which means compared to the volume of the cell, the surface area is really high, which is going to allow quick transportation through diffusion, through osmosis, through active transport. We'll talk about it. You can see a lot of structures known as the mitochondria within these cells. Why do we have those? If you have already watched my video about cell structures, you'd know mitochondria perform aerobic respiration. They produce energy by the respiration of glucose for active transport. If you don't know active transport, don't worry about it, because the next video will be talking about active transport. Another important thing you should know that ions move from the soil into the root hair by multiple methods. Sodium ions, potassium, ammonium, nitrate, magnesium, and phosphate ions. These are the most important ions that a plant needs. And these are all absorbed by the higher surface area of the root hair. They have a large vacuole within the center, which is a common feature for most plant cells. It allows storage of ions, and obviously you know water is the main entity a plant needs, so water also stores water. This is known as the cell SAP, SAP, which means the cell solution. So water comes in by osmosis, ions move in by diffusion and active transport. Moving on. The root hair cell also, on the cell surface membrane, on the membrane of the cells, has a thing known as the transport proteins. These transport proteins are present on the cell membrane. So cell membrane has various transport proteins like channel proteins and carrier proteins. We'll talk about it. For active transport. Active transport happens with these proteins. Moving on. The red blood cells are present within the animal kingdom. So red blood cells, you can see the shape is biconcave. This biconcave shape means they are thicker from the edges and obviously thinner from the center. That allows more surface area to volume ratio. Again, their volume is smaller compared to their surface area. The ratio is really big. It allows quicker transportation, quicker exchange. Now, exchange of what? Obviously, oxygen from the lungs towards the cells. They are anucleated. Anucleated means they do not have a nucleus. So they don't have a nucleus, which allows more space within the cells. Why do they need more space? They need more space for more hemoglobin accumulation. Hemoglobin is a protein that the red blood cells need for oxygen transportation. In the absence of nucleus, these cells can squeeze easily through the very thin capillaries. Capillaries are very narrow and the red blood cells can squeeze through them. Now we have this cell known as a sperm cell, very specific to male animals. Sperm has a head, a neck region, a tail, and an acrosome at the top. A nucleus is present within the head. The acrosome contains enzymes to digest the membrane of the egg cell, because when the sperm tries to penetrate the egg cell, it has to digest the membranes of the egg cell, so the acrosome has those enzymes. The head contains the nucleus that has the genetic material from the male parent, which is going to go into the child and obviously determine the qualities of the child. The tail allows the sperm to move through the semen. If you notice the neck, it has these orange structures, which are again the mitochondria. You know what mitochondria does, right? Mitochondria provides energy through aerobic respiration for the sperm to move. So you can say for movement, for motility, for mobility. Another structure we have is the epithelium, which is again very specific to animals. Epithelium or epithelial tissue. It is made by very flat tile-like cells. It normally makes the outermost covering of almost all organs, like your stomach, like inside of the cheeks, like lungs, like blood vessels. You can see their thickness is not very high. They have a low thickness. They are flat, but their thickness is not high, which decreases the decreases the distance for quicker diffusion and quicker exchange. So particles can move from one side of the epithelium to the other side by diffusion really quickly. They have a higher surface area. Again, you can see their surface area is very high. They're not very thick. So surface area to volume ratio is again high, which provides quicker exchange. So particles can move from one side to the other side of the epithelium real quick. So now you can see the structure of a cell is pretty much related to its function, and that is going to allow us understanding cells even better. Stay tuned guys, thanks.